Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Whiskey, Wine, and Moonshine. I believe this is episode 75, Church Business. Thank you all for joining us. I am Miss Smart, one of your hosts. You know me as Think Pretty Smart. I have with me today Lady Buddha and Sojourner Verdad. Ladies, say hello to the people.
Hello, people.
As we do every week, we go through and ask how the ladies are doing. So I'll start off with our bride-to-be, Lady Buddha. How are you doing, and have you killed anyone because of wedding planning yet?
No, and everyone at my house is still living and healthy, so I think that means everything is still going well. No, everything is going well. I'm been doing a lot of stuff in the ramp up. But right now I'm just kind of chilling out with, what's this one? I forgot. It has a picture of a sun on the outside. I think it's called Mirasu or something like that. But anyway, it's a cab. So I got my cab and a big bottle of water because I'm still hydrating. But that's it. What about y'all?
Well, I am not hydrating. I'm actually drinking wine and literally eating cheese and crackers because I just discovered the sun-dried tomato and basil wheat thins with a slice of Havarti on them are really, really very close to heaven. I mean, they are a culinary delight without actually cooking.
Y'all should have heard her before we started the show. That bag was just a crunching.
Oh, yes. I was getting it set all the way up, people. Set all the way up.
And Havarti is one of my favorite cheeses, so.
Yes. It's a simple cheese, but it doesn't. There's a lot you can do with it, especially if you get the plain. Now, I used to really go with Havarti and dill, but I got away with that because, the dill would sort of, excuse me, interrupt other flavors that I might have going on, so I got the plain Havarti. And I'm drinking a red. It's a table wine. It's a mix. Nothing particular. I think it might be like kitchen sink or something like that. I had a big bottle sitting around the house. I don't understand that. I'm sorry, where's the joke? Okay.
We didn't say a word.
Huh?
We didn't say a word.
Oh, okay. There was some giggling there, and the giggling implies certain things. Anyway, so that's what I'm doing. Sojourner, what about you?
I'm doing all right. My stomach is running amok, so all I have is just water. Like, it's not infused with anything. It's just plain out.
Wow.
Right.
Where's the ginger? Nothing?
Nothing, just some water. And me laying on my pillow, chilling.
Mm-hmm.
How was your weekend, Miss Smart? Did you enjoy homecoming?
I did. It might have enjoyed it too much early on. But then my line sister, who I was hanging with the weekend, well, let me actually say, shout out to my girl, I'll call her Sweet Ra from Detroit, who came, and she was willing to show up places by herself without the people she came with. She was trying to get it in that hard. And my line sister, who I typically hang out with, shout out to her, Shaza, because every year what we do is intend to go to day parties and then decide that napping is better. And
napping is a party. Napping is your day party.
We continued that tradition, and we missed a day party on Friday and Saturday after brunch. I decided that again, napping really, really won out.
Napping is a day party.
Huh?
I said napping is a day party.
Yeah, speak on it, girl. My ankles and my thighs was hurting because old. So yeah.
I was gonna troll you. And then, we decided we were tired and didn't want to be on camera. I was going to have, like, all these orange and green pom-poms. And every time you said something, I was going to, like, shake the pom-poms.
You know what? You are a bitter, unhappy woman. That's
to save my life.
We need to just stop and restart the broadcast.
Why?
Just for that. I need to see it.
No. This we're about to talk
that, about Jojo. I could have figured that out.
But you know what? I had planned to send you a side message. No, listen, I had planned to send you a side message, Buddha, and say, hey, get some FAMU gear, like some.
We are about to move into the actual show.
Wait, did she get muted?
Doesn't know how to.
Muted my mic. What?
Neither of them know how to act, so we'll be moving on soon.
That is so trifling. Stop it.
So trifling. But
And
I
nobody
should admit,
amused the
I had
bride to
two
be.
big orange and green pom poms. I was going wild out.
Ah.
Mhm.
Oh man.
But I made a promise to be a better person this week using the 4 agreements.
Well, always do your best.
That's
That would,
right.
yeah.
Which fam you did on Saturday.
Laugh it up now. Laugh it
But
up
I'm
now.
actually no, but I'm actually glad you enjoyed yourself because everybody from fam that went to DC had an amazing time. They said it was great.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, the pictures were really nice. We should have gone, Buddha. Well, I know you got planned and stuff, but that would have been fun.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is a certifiably good time. I mean, people like, Ra, she didn't go to Howard, obviously. Her parents did actually. But she showed up and showed out. So lots of people who didn't attend the university. I guess, I hope it doesn't, I mean, oh God, I hope it doesn't turn into Freaknik where they end up having to cancel it because too many people who've never like matriculated start showing up like with their matching cars and coochie sweaters or whatever the kids are wearing nowadays.
Well, it could be the new big thing since we don't have the Atlanta Classic anymore.
Well, but it was the big thing when it was in a Biggie song. It's been a big thing. I just don't want it to be big outside of certain circles.
No,
Like,
I'm talking about fam coming up there, like to like really, because Atlanta Classic used to be like the thing everybody went to, and ever since the classic was, whatever, people have been looking for something else to do. So it really could become like super, super huge, which means
mhm.
everybody would kind of take it over.
Yeah, no, I
Pre-pan.
don't need that. I mean, wait. Let me just be clear. It would be okay if fam people came. It'd be okay if Morehouse, Spelman, North Carolina A&T. What I don't want is Raekwon them from Detroit.
Well, I'm just saying, there's some Tallahassee locals that
I don't want them either. I don't want them either. Oh, Florida, stay your ass in Florida.
would.
Anyway, so what do we usually do next? So we tell people where they can find us. If you're listening to this, you've obviously found us, but if you want to send a message to your friends, foes, and associates, tell them that they can find us on iTunes, Stitcher, Podomatic. Generally, just Googling Whiskey, Wine, and Moonshine, you will come to our website. We can also be reached on the Twitter at Whiskey, Wine, Moon, and we also have individual Twitter accounts, which, I won't give them right now. You gotta wait till the end for that. We'll save that. So yeah, what else? Shout out to the chat. We have, of course, Jeffrey. Jeffrey is actually saying, "Hey, ladies, looking pretty as always." But Jeffrey, sweetie, we don't have the cameras on, so unless you have small cameras in our homes, I don't know that you can. So that's concerning.
Jeffrey, yeah, my camera is off. I have my turban on.
Say it. hmm Exactly.
Right.
So, and then we have Hustle Crow talking about that I was being bougie with wheat thins. Oh, boo boo, they were on sale like 2 for 1. So that ain't being bougie. That's being cheap. And he's saying, Hustle's also saying that you should have come to homecoming. Yes, and you and Jeffrey should have come to homecoming. I don't know how that would have worked
Wait,
out.
what?
He said, "Sup, G," to Jeffrey. You need to come to DC next year, hit homecoming, and get some buns with these higher learning women because Hustle ain't worth nothing.
See, I was just about to say that I was long overdue a trip to DC because the last time I was there was inauguration.
Yep,
So,
my birthday. I like to say my birthday.
oh yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
it was your birthday then, but that
Mhm.
was the last trip, so I
Which
am long overdue.
I think I need to make this announcement right now so that everyone who listens understands that my birthday is actually on Inauguration Day. So if you want to forward gifts of frankincense and myrrh, I would be
Oh,
more than happy to take them.
please stop, Jesus.
Anyway, moving on. Don't forget to share our link for, excuse me, Black Church Inc. And I believe that is in the chat. So those of you who are watching us on YouTube, you obviously can see it. But those of you who are not, who are listening, grab a pen and pencil and write this down.
Not that link. Hold on.
Oh, Sojourner's about to
Not
get to it.
that one. That's the link for them to come to this hangout.
The Bitly WWM Church is not okay.
Yeah,
You're right.
that's for this hangout. I'm getting
Listen,
ready. Hmm?
this is why it takes a village. It takes a village.
But I will give you guys the link for you guys to check out Black Church Inc., which we're going to talk about a little bit later on in the show. And that bit.ly link is something.
Listen,
I need a few seconds. I didn't know I had to do that. Come back to me.
you brought it up.
Okay.
Like you didn't know that you brought something up yourself.
I didn't bring it up. Smart
You
did.
said I'll share the link, and then you're like, I don't
Because she
know.
was about to do another one. Go ahead. Come back to me. Dang.
Anyway, Jeffrey wants to know while our cameras are off because we just didn't have it together this evening, and
We
we
tired.
we're exactly. I've been partying real hard, staying up late at night, and by late I mean, oh my God, one night I stayed up till 4 o'clock in the morning, and that's not my life. That's not my truth. That's not what Jesus wants for me. So, Hustle says he has to be ratchet because it looks like we're talking religion. Well, we're kind of talking religion. I think maybe the business of religion.
Yeah.
But before we get to that, let me just say, and we didn't necessarily have a theme in mind, but I do want to just say, I personally appreciate some religious-based television and commentary. So, like, I watch Preachers of LA. I intend to tune in to Preachers of DC. I mean, not in Detroit. And for those of you who haven't watched Preachers of LA, at least, it is not your typical we're going to fight everybody reality show. Like, they really do talk about real issues about, like, how the church can be a part of the community, how, drug addiction affects families, how family rifts affect families. They even get into dating and, building families and whatnot. So I think it's a show that is pretty decent, I think. Anyway, have either of you guys seen it?
Because it never would have crossed my mind to even think about trying to attempt to look at it at all.
Exactly. So I actually put up on my personal Facebook page the announcement about there being a Preachers of Detroit, and I got all these comments like, I can't believe. My only concern was that I don't know anybody from Detroit on a reality show that doesn't like to go to blows. So I was concerned that eventually these pastors would do that because that is the climate there. But outside of that, I'm sure it will highlight a lot of real issues and be great for just general excuse me, general conversation. Sojo, it looks like you finally gotten the link, so you want to go ahead and talk about that?
I really can't stand you. We supposed to be all blessed with love and light of the Lord, and you finally got this link. It's bit.ly/1s2fqev. That's the bit.ly link for you guys to go to purchase your deluxe edition copy of Black Church Inc., and you get 30% off of that using the code WWMPod. So definitely do that today. We will have that link. It's been tweeted several times, and we will have that link in the show notes as well.
Mm-hmm.
Full disclosure, Sojo, I really only called you out because I wanted to put another wheat thin and cheese in my mouth.
I know. See?
Yeah. And I muted myself so nobody had to hear me chew. I want to go back to something you said, Lady Buddha. You said that you wouldn't have thought that the show was about that. Going back to Black Church Inc., what did you think the movie was going to be about?
I just went with the open mind. I mean, I saw the description, and it just talked about the rise of mega churches. And since I live in Atlanta, I'm familiar with two mega churches, which both actually come up in this documentary. But aside from just the idea that there is a concept of a mega church and what some of the pastors may or may not do, that's all I thought it was going to be about. So I was just kind of open just to see.
Okay. What about you, Sojo?
I was a little apprehensive because I wasn't sure of the approach that they were going to take with it. I mean, I knew what the concept was going to be: mega churches, money, so forth and so on, but I wasn't sure if it was going to come out like with an all-out blast type thing that would kind of turn people off immediately, or was it going to be a gradual build? So, I went into it like, what's this going to be about? Can I send it to my mom and her friends? So those are my initial thoughts before I hit play.
Yeah, I actually thought I think I was correct in my assumption of what it was going to be about, but I thought it would be more inflammatory and more,
Mm-hmm.
more accusatory and salacious.
Mm-hmm.
It presented basic facts, like, how they're set up to, as 503 such and such organizations, those types of things, and not having those checks and balances. But I'll stop there, and just overall, then give me you guys' overall feelings about watching the movie.
Well, Booty,
Well,
you watched it
I
first.
watched it first, yeah, and I was like, oh, this is really going to be interesting. It sparks a lot of thoughts. I took some notes. I mean, these are things that we've talked about, so it's not like anything happened was a revelation. Okay, so let me just go there. But I still thought it was interesting and thought provoking in different ways. And it made me want to just have a broader conversation with other people, and kind of rehash old conversations because, again, some of this stuff, we can go and talk about it in more detail, like with Creflo Dollar, for instance, was on our local news, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I remember talking about it in our community at the time that some of this stuff was happening that they're talking about. So it was still interesting, and I did like the way they kind of weave different things together. Some footage from other places like CNN, and then some original footage. But I wrote down some quotes that struck me that I want to kind of toss out to y'all when we get to that point. So.
Okay, Sojo, what about you?
I loved it actually. Like I said, I went into it wondering was it going to be like you said, inflammatory or anything like that. I love the way that they started it off because they started off with like a history of the black church, and I
Mhm.
like the fact that they started with the foundation because that's a conversation that actually my mom and I had a couple of weeks ago. When we went to visit the Civil Rights Museum, and she was talking to me about in her day growing up, the black church was where all of the social action movements were
Mm-hmm.
basically,
Mhm.
started and funded and planned and, all that thing. And then it goes to how it's almost like a how did we get here type deal. And so
Well,
I like the
yeah.
way that it moved. I really did. I also like the fact that they didn't necessarily focus on just people who were talking against megachurches. They also had a couple of megachurch pastors to come in and kind of give their side of it. So it was balanced. So I did really enjoy it, and it wasn't that long.
Right.
Like
Right.
It was like less than an hour, so
yeah,
which
and I
means
was
I had time to
actually
look at it.
and when we get to that part at the very end, when they kind of talk about that one little sentence where that dude just says it and then kind of lets it go, I was like, dang, that could have been a whole nother hour of conversation right there.
Well, you
Hmm.
know what? I was thinking that's why I just went ahead and started in here because I know when we get to that last part, we're all going to have a lot to say. So,
And are we
um,
talking about this week and next week, right?
No, just
no,
I
just
think
this week.
yeah, because we're gonna do something else next week.
Okay, okay, okay. Oh, good.
So,
Yep.
my thoughts on it is, like I said, I knew the stuff that they were saying before, but after watching the movie, my perspective changed. So before I was, oh, pastors shouldn't have this, they shouldn't have that, blah, blah, which I am to some degree, but now I'm more like, it is a business. Their business is entertainment. People are paying for entertainment. Maybe they should just have a flat out cover charge, because
Cover
all they're
charge.
doing right now is the tithing. All they're doing right now is having a pay as you can, just like what is the place, Planned Parenthood.
Well,
That's all they're doing right now with tithing.
what's the word? What's the phrase that I texted y'all? Gospel-tainers was the word that they use. So
Hmm.
they
Yeah.
kind of talked about this distinction between, really, even though no one ever said the phrase, they were talking about Black liberation theology and talking about, like you said, the context of the Black church in supporting um, uh, Black people and alleviating oppression, or fighting back and becoming more prosperous in the community. And so that's one mindset. And then kind of they didn't make a direct link to it, but then kind of the shift was to, okay, well, some of us are making it out, and this is the way that we're making it out. And instead of focusing on the community, I am going to show you my opulence and tell you that the way to get to my opulence is basically to pay more, you know. And so
Mhm.
one of the quotes that I wanted to throw out to you all that I think really bridges those two places was from the New Orleans pastor when he said, if the community is attending your church, you are a community leader. And so, from the Black theology perspective, the Black liberation theology perspective, those pastors like Mama Sojo, you know, that those were community leaders, and it was clear that that's what they were doing. If we're talking about Creflo and Eddie and people like that, they are not considered, and I'm not sure that they consider themselves to be community leaders. They're
Right,
prosperity leaders. So
right.
kind of what do you all think even just about that idea that if the community is attending your church, you are a community leader?
Well, I think
I would agree, and we've had this conversation. In fact, I just had this conversation last night about. I was talking about education. If you teach kids, you know, a lot of the stuff that was done in the civil rights and, you know, through slavery, how we gathered our free place was the church. Now church membership is in the decline. So where are we to gather? Where are we to organize? But I believe that a couple things that were mentioned in this movie are important. The middle class growing, the black middle class growing and wanting a certain kind of church, and the
Mm-hmm.
church moving because that's the main audience. The church moved away from being political and subversive because their main audience and many of their pastors now want to be them good Negroes. They don't want to be the ones that are, you know, in the community protesting. Like a lot of them don't want to do that. And excuse me, I think it's a reflection of the changing demographic of the changing socioeconomic status of or the appearance of the changing socioeconomic status. Because let's be clear, there were black people in many black churches who had two nickels to rub together for years. It just, huh?
Amen.
I said right.
Yes. So this idea that only now because the middle class is no the middle our black quote unquote better to do were always at the church just mixed in
And
with people
and
who
that's
weren't.
and that's the
Right.
thing, you know, going back to my mom and some of the things that she talked about, because we have conversations about like how kids aren't taught decorum, or you know, even how to properly speak or dress or that kind of thing. And one thing she talked about were in community churches is that you had blacks from all different
Mm-hmm.
socioeconomic statuses. So you had your professors, the collegiate professors, in the same church as like your domestic workers, and they were all teaching the kids in Sunday school and you know whatever. And I want to go back to the very beginning when they talked about the history.
Mm-hmm.
First, one of the things that they pointed out was that the purpose of the church, and this was funny, they said it was to teach the teachings of Jesus Christ, but the packaging and promotion were what became debatable.
Mm-hmm.
You had your either addressing the soul or you had a social context. And so at first, and I can't remember which pastor it said, he said that the first step was to ground people, the second step was supposed to be to uplift them, and the third step was supposed to be to empower them.
I
I
think
And
wrote
this
that
that was the New Orleans one. Anyway,
and this and this was the first opportunity that we had as a church. It was our very first black owned institution. So we created our own rules. We even had salaries back then, not like the paid preacher salary, but there were
down.
people who were hired to do things. Like if you had a carpenter in the
mhm.
community, you hired him. You also had your guidelines. So it was our first almost FUBU, you know, for us by us
Right, right.
entity. And then that's when we also saw our church, the role was to shape Black America for the better. That's one thing that I saw that they said. Then we got into the debate of, are you a civic and community leader versus a spiritual or financial leader? And that's because of the prosperity preaching that
Mm-hmm.
started to become popular in the late 90s maybe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I can attest to the prosperity part of it because my church in Atlanta, it's funny now looking back on it. It was called a mega church back then, but by today's standards, it was nowhere near a mega church. We had
Right.
1,000, you know, something, or actually, I think at its peak was 5,000 people. But that's nothing compared to New Birth and you know all that stuff
Mm-hmm.
then. And at the time, one of the teachings that she was doing was, it's not the prosperity teaching that people are doing today, but it was teaching people how not to live with a mindset of lack. So like when we talk about the game of life and Florence Scovel Chin and all of those things, that's what was being taught in my church. And then it seemed like in some kind of way it got warped into this bling bling Bible theme that's, kind of taken off. So, that was what my little 2 cents I wanted to put in for
Well,
that.
and that's the part that becomes interesting to me that they didn't get into, but I think is worthy of conversation is what led to the warping. Because I think that when we talk about the prosperity from the perspective of Lawrence Scovel and other people who wrote in that time period, because they all say very similar things, it's almost like if you take the same teachings but have them come from someone who themselves either lacks character or who is corrupted by power or who is some kind of way is warped themselves, then we stop seeing how the how to apply it in a way that still benefits society as a whole and only benefits you. So like one of the people, let me see if I can find it real quick, talks about the fact that people's lives ought to be better if they're committed to the gospel of
Yes.
Jesus Christ.
Mm-hmm.
And then how one person, the guy who talked about crunkology, he said his last name was Crunk, said that, his understanding was that you should be abundantly supplied, but that didn't mean that you would all be millionaires. It just means that you would have enough to live your life and then to help somebody else. And we could think about that across multiple dimensions, whether that's materially helping someone else or helping someone else with your time or your talents.
Mm-hmm.
And I just think that some of that, gets lost or twisted in different mindsets, and then it becomes perpetuated, across multiple thousands of people.
I liked how they went into the conversation on tithing.
Yes.
Because they broke it down in a way that, I often think about, but I don't hear a lot of people talking about nowadays. Because sometimes when you will go to a traditional church and they'll talk about tithe and give 10% of what you have to God, no matter what, and blah 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 blah. But they never talk about what's being done with the tithes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So they said that what was supposed to be done was 40% of it was supposed to go out towards the community, not your church initially, but 40% to outreach programs for your surrounding community, which was easy to do with those small churches. And then the rest of it was to meet the needs of the church.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that somebody brought up was, well, number one, should churches give at least 10% to the community that they serve? And then do mega churches, with all the money that they're bringing in, are they really giving back 10%? And I can't remember which pastor said it, but he said if that was the case, poverty in Atlanta, or Atlanta wouldn't even have a poverty issue.
Right. Yeah. But that goes back to the central question. If the community is attending your church, are you a community leader? Because I think part of being a community leader is not just the activism perspective, but it's what are you doing to support the community at large? And, if you think that that's not important or you think that the answer is nothing, that's one way to answer the question. We can see it kind of, the proof is in the pudding or not. But go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, everybody is not going to be a Martin Luther King. You know what I'm saying? Every pastor is not going to be an MLK. Every pastor is not built to be an MLK. But then I also think about Ferguson and how the pastor at Ferguson was trying to be a safe haven for the people that came to visit while they were doing the protests. Like, that's the thing that we don't necessarily have in great numbers anymore that we used to.
And we have, I guess, more individuals doing it. I think that one of the women I mentioned was the poet, and I'm not going to remember her name. I think it's Elizabeth Vega, who was kind of there to support people during the Ferguson. But kind of the flip side to that, which is a story that I was going to tell you all, that they actually said in the documentary. So Eddie Long, right?
I got 5 stones in my hand. No, let me stop.
Yeah, so I know, right? So this was in like the late 90s or early 2000s when I think it was late 90s. And one of my best friends at the time was a member of New Birth Baptist Church. And he, I had spoken to him when we were a little bit younger, and then a couple years had passed, and I, talked to him again, and he told me that he was going to a new church, a much smaller church, and I asked him why. And he said, he had a crisis of faith or was going through some things and he really needed some counseling. And he tried to set up a meeting with his pastor, or what he thought was his pastor. Mm-hmm. And he talked about the impossibility of getting to meet with him. And he talked about the fact that everywhere the man went, there was always his entourage and he couldn't touch him. And so when I heard this exact same story coming out of the man's mouth, I think it was the CNN anchor discussing the story about Eddie Long. I don't know what year or whether he was talking about it in recent, but I heard the exact same story all those years ago about him being untouchable. And if you're talking about being in a place where you support the community, and not even with time, but with your resources, either ministering with the word or whatever it is, providing a safe haven, you kind of have to be touchable. Somebody has to kind of be able to talk to you and be near you and like give you a hug or shake your hand or look you eye to eye. And so it goes back to that same question.
And I do understand that, when you have a smaller church, it is easier to serve the needs of your congregation, where you can be at their beck and call, I guess. And when you have 10,000 and 20,000 people, it is absolutely impossible. However, you should be accessible. Like this whole entourage bodyguard, they talked about one of the things, and I put down where one of the pastors said, as almost a defense, well, how many times have people been shot in church? How many times have people run out with the offering basket? As if that was why they had bodyguards and all of that. And I'm like, seriously, dude, how many times has that really happened? Like with all the churches that we have everywhere, how many times has that actually happened?
Well, let me just say this. I thought the same thing, and I thought I didn't hear the question that they asked him. And so if I didn't hear the question that they asked, like they may have said, like, are there ever, any incident, like they may have sort of prodded that, but
they asked why is an entourage necessary, or why is
right, that's the part we heard though. Sometimes in these things there's a longer question.
Slicing it,
cut part of the question off, because it didn't seem, I don't know, just the way I guess the way I answer questions. If I were in that position and doing a documentary, I would be on the defensive, so I wouldn't give them more information than I needed to. So that's why I was like,
that particular pastor though, he said that as a hedge, but he himself was touchable. Like we saw a video of that same pastor, hugging other people, and him saying that. So he used that to simply say, you should be wise, but you should not be simply just untouchable. Mm-hmm. So he just used that as a hedge to say, blanket. Maybe you can't just say that all the time. You never need, any type of support or bodyguard or whatever. But that doesn't mean that you have to take it to. I think he was basically saying you don't have to take it to either extreme.
And one thing I will say about my mom.
One thing I want to go back to, because I know we have moved from the finance part, but I do want to say so they talk about getting all this money and not having any accountability for it. And I know it's a large church, and I thought typically the deacon board was supposed to be like, put in by, sort of like voted in as like the congressman of the church, and who had financial decision-making power. I could be wrong, because I haven't been a member in a very long time. That's one. And the second piece is that I don't think, and based on the people that I have talked to who are dedicated church members, they're buying those Maybachs, they're buying all that fancy stuff for their pastors. I don't think a lot of the flock wants to know, because there is software out there, and I know we've all sat in sorority meetings and got those financial statements where we know exactly where every single dollar is going to. So it could be done if the quote-unquote flock demanded it, but I don't think they, like two people said, they don't really want to know.
Here's the thing, is that, and they brought this up in the documentary, was about the love offerings and the wanting to see your pastor blessed, because by seeing your pastor blessed, somehow you are blessed.
Mm-hmm.
Trickle down,
So so
economic, trickle down.
Trickle
so
down
what
tithing.
happens is that they understand that their tithes are supposed to be used for, whatever, but then they will also turn around, and I know a lot of people that do this. They will turn around and somehow be like, I have to make sure pastor so and so has this amount of dollars for their birthday gift. And I remember going to a church service with my mom's pastor, who he's also a mega church pastor that wasn't included in this documentary. And I want to say two things about him is that, yes, he is the pastor of a mega church, but one of the things that I think my mom liked about him, and I like about him too, is that he does have his associate pastors. If he's not accessible, he makes sure that you have someone that you can talk to if you're in
Mm-hmm.
spiritual crisis or need, or if you just need to call up somebody. There is a whatever in place. But the
Mm-hmm.
other thing I noticed is that he had a guest pastor that came to speak one day, and at the very end of his sermon, he told the congregation, you should be giving your gold to this man. You should be giving your last dollar to this man. You should be doing this. You should be doing that. And he looked so uncomfortable because that wasn't what he was
Mhm.
teaching the congregation. But
Right.
it was very obvious, and people were all caught up in the emotion of the yes, yes. And I watched people start taking things off. And I
Mm.
was like, wait a minute. And it's so easy for people to get caught up in that kind of thing. And if that's the atmosphere that's going on in that particular church every single Sunday, I can see how people end up getting caught up like that.
But doesn't it take a certain mindset to get caught up in that? Because I mean, for me, and me and a good friend of mine from high school have this joke that we're going to start a church and we're going to invest everybody's tithes, and then at the end of a year, give them their money back, and give them their earnings back. How
Mm-hmm.
shocked that they would be. I've sat in many churches and thought to myself, I see cars outside that are 12 years old, and in the pastor's space is a brand new car, and I don't understand why you guys are giving what could be a down payment on a car to this. Like, he hadn't done anything great for me. But I
Mm-hmm.
know there's a whole audience of people who are getting what they expect. They're getting the show. They're getting the hope. They're getting all that. They're getting the feeling of forgiveness. And that's why I
Mm-hmm.
said earlier, maybe it should just be a cover charge.
I think
Well,
that a lot of times people get caught up in the energy of
right.
it all. And it's just the same thing, and this is going to sound bad, but it's just the same thing back in the day when they used to have those lynch parties or whatever. You would have people who would know something is wrong, and they get so caught up in the frenzy
Mm-hmm.
that it would be something that just almost was like a tidal wave that happened. And yes, there are people that would say, whoa, this doesn't seem right, let me sit out.
Right.
And then you'll have those people who have neutral spirits, who are
Mm-hmm.
easily influenced, and they get caught up in everything. And I, so I could definitely see how something like that would happen. And the funniest part of the DVD, and y'all ain't say nothing about this yet, when Tyler Perry was speaking in tongues and gave
Oh,
Jason
I
$1 million
saw that, and mm. So
and
before we
touched
get
Eddie Jakes on the head, and he passed out.
I couldn't, that was taking the joke too far, but it ties into the idea again of gospeltainment. And like if you think about caffeine or even endorphins and the idea of getting a high, if you get your high, if you once you start to do something and your body gets used to it and your brain gets used to it and you kind of have all this association, if you get your high and you're easily emotionally influenced, you can make different types of decisions when you are entertained in that way, in a manipulative way in some instances. And this is, of course, is not talking about everybody, because I know a whole lot of people, including a whole lot of Buddhists, who grew up in the church and they love gospel music. And so they want to go to sing and be a part of the gospel music. If I hear a good Whitney Houston gospel song, I'm all in too, but I'm not about to, throw all my money at you. But here's the question I wanted to ask you all. So I think about it in terms of high schools, right? So if you go to a really small high school, the benefit for the teachers and for the students is that because it's so small, you can have that one-on-one relationship with all your teachers. It's a community. Everybody knows all the students, and everybody's looking out for you. You can't hide. The downside to attending a small high school is they can't offer the same types of classes. So you're not going to have AP chemistry, AP biology, AP history because they just don't have the staff to be able to handle those classes.
Mm-hmm.
Meanwhile, if you go to these mega high schools, these huge buildings with these sprawling campuses, they can offer you whatever it is you ever thought you wanted to take, including for the academic classes, for some of the extracurricular activities, and things of that nature. Now, my question is, what is the benefit of a mega church, in your opinion?
I can say what the benefit should be. The benefit
Mm-hmm.
should be the more resources we pull, the more things we can do. So, for instance, if a mega church is able to offer $10,000 in book scholarships for children, then they may
Mm-hmm.
be able to cut a deal with Barnes and Nobles to get 20% off of the books.
Right.
You know, through that.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it should be. And in one of the things I wasn't cool with the documentary about, and I know it's hard to get the financial information from a church, but they made a lot of assumptions. They're assuming that X amount of percent doesn't go back into the community. And I don't think that's fair to assume just because you don't see it. You know, they may be buying paying tuition for some of the kids. You know, they may be giving emergency loans or emergency rent payments to people, but because people don't see it, it may be a excuse me, a private thing between, let's say, the deacons and someone in need that maybe you don't see them giving, over in the course of a year, $100,000 in rent to people. You don't see that. Doesn't mean it doesn't happen.
I think one of the benefits that draws people initially is that we always think that a lot of times, especially as a Black community, we want to come together. We want to have something to call our own. So when you're talking about having 20,000 Black people in one place celebrating God, that's
Mm-hmm.
a draw in and of itself. And then when you talk about, like Smart said, with what you could do with those resources, a lot of the mega churches have schools for their
Yes,
kids.
they do.
They do projects, they do outreach projects and things like that. So I think that a lot of people come in thinking, I can have my own community that's safe for my child, that's safe for my family, where we have the same values, and it's not just me and 150 people, it's me and 20,000. That's
Mm-hmm.
that's the initial draw that comes into that.
That's
And
bigger
then,
than some cities.
exactly, and that's what a lot of people are thinking, and that's what it is. It's like, oh my God, if we can create this, then imagine if we can take that and spread it throughout the city or spread it throughout the world. Because I think that people come to church with good intentions. People who are coming to church are coming because they want to feed their spirit.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
But that also makes it easier for them to be manipulated if they don't have the right leader. And
Right.
like you said, Miss Smart, a lot of times, like in the documentary, they did not necessarily cite, documents, but that's also because several of those pastors refused to give them up.
True, exactly.
Well,
That's the thing. It's not easy to get those documents.
Right,
But
and going back to Creflo
Creflo.
in his CNN interview, because they have been investigated by the Senate Finance Committee,
Mm-hmm.
and Creflo's on CNN talking about this. This was actually ironic, talking about the Senate Finance Committee, if they even had the right to invest themselves and he said, and because I was like, invest themselves. What are you talking about? As a position to be a tax examiner. But
Mm-hmm.
then I know of several congregation members who have
Mm-hmm.
talked about them not being required, because I think required is a bad word, but being encouraged to show their W-2s.
Right. I remember that.
So
I
how
always
do
wondered if that
you
was really true because I heard it so much. Did you hear that, Miss
right?
Smart? Did you know that?
Yeah,
I've
I've noticed it.
I've heard that, and
Okay.
I believe that, and I believe that they convince people to do that under the guise of accountability. Like, this is going to help you be accountable.
Accountable to your tithes.
Mm-hmm.
Are
And
you
see,
doing your 10% of your gross?
and my thing is if you are requiring your congregation to be accountable, Well, anyway, that's a
Are,
whole nother.
are you
But
being
that
accountable?
just goes back to.
Well, but
But, hmm?
I was just gonna say that, but Creflo claimed, I don't know because I'm not a member, that he didn't have to open his books up to the Senate Investigating Committee, but that he did open it up to the members if they asked, if they wanted to know that that was information that was available to them. I have no idea if that's true. I'm not there, but that's what he claimed.
Mm-hmm.
Now, and I know this has absolutely nothing to do with the documentary. I don't even know. Um, okay, look, after that Eddie Long thing,
Mm.
when people at Eddie Long's church were leaving and
And went
wanting to
to
find
clean
another similar environment, so the first thing that they did was they said, okay, I don't believe in Eddie Long anymore because of what's going on with this church. I'm going to
Yep.
visit and try to go to Creflo's church. When
Yep.
Creflo told them that they better go back to Eddie Long's church and call them, I can't remember if it was traitors or unfaithful or if it was something. When
Whatever
he
it was, it
told
broke my heart.
it broke my heart because I was like, these people are coming because they're unsure,
Yep.
and it's almost like your husband hits you. You
Yep.
run to your father or your uncle or whatever, and they're like, you better go back to that husband because he's taught you
Yes.
so well. Like that whole thing,
Yes. I
it
mean, I
bothered
really,
my
it really made
spirit
me
so much.
sad.
Well, wait. He was shoring up his base. He was sending a message to his congregation that if things got tight there and they left him, they'd be traitors. So he was doing a job to killing two birds with one stone. He was
Yes,
helping
he
out his
was.
boy, and he was helping out himself by planting that seed of you don't want to be a traitor, you don't want to be a Judas.
And
That's
while I
true.
know that doesn't have anything to do with the documentary that we're talking about, it does have to do with the psychological part of molding your congregation to
Yeah.
do the things that you ask.
Well, but that's kind of when I say that there was parts that they didn't talk about, that's part of it. Like how to become a mega church, there's still some things that actually have to happen in terms of large numbers of people that have to agree with the message that you are promoting, And interestingly enough, I used to, watch TV and
Long time ago.
a long time ago, and so Creflo used to be on TV.
Yep,
All,
he sure did.
And
all the time.
That's why I
all
heard
the
about him,
time.
him and Taffy.
And I wasn't this was before I became a Buddhist or like right at the very beginning when I was thinking about Buddhism. But I was always interested in what different pastors had to say because I was also kind of just studying religion in general. And I would see Creflo, and I actually liked watching him on TV because I thought he was a good teacher of the word at the time. Um, and I would flip through and kind of watch and see what he had to say and then flip, flop, flip, flip. And so one particular day, though, I heard him talking about tithing. And he just kind of threw this statement out, and I heard it with my own ears. And I've always looked for it because I just wanted to share it with people because I couldn't believe it. He was like, and then you get cancer, you're not tithing, and then you get cancer and you wonder why. And I just about to I heard it with my own ears just like that in quick succession. It wasn't like he said it at one point and then 5 minutes later he made this other thing. He linked those two things together, and I was just like, what the hell are you talking about?
I can see your face. I can see the face that you made when that happened.
I
When
couldn't
that
get
went through
over
your
it.
ears, I can see the face you made.
I couldn't get over it. But it's just like, if I had missed that one statement, I could, and everybody doesn't go to church every single day. You may have zoned out one particular statement and everybody's cheering and clapping and maybe you, whatever. And you could just see this person who you feel like is teaching you something in a way that you can understand it because he was very accessible. And I always felt like I learned something new about the Bible or whatever the scripture he was teaching at the time. And I could see how more and more people would say, oh, he's a good preacher. He's somebody you should listen to. You should go. And then you have all these other benefits of being part of a larger community. And so the community continues to grow in that way. So, I mean, it's just one of the things they didn't address is how those mega churches, because they didn't start off big, they had to grow to become big. So what is the process and how do people come on board,
Well,
basically?
they advertise a video that teaches you how to do it.
I
I
was just about to say that.
I suspect, and this is from a psychological perspective, that
Mhm.
you give people things that sound right and support or shore up a lot of their deep-seated views And then you slip in little gems of crazy.
Right.
Jim Jones, hello, and I mean, I'm not saying that everybody was headed to Jonestown, and like all people that are in mega churches are headed to Jonestown, but I will say that a lot of the same techniques are used.
But
Like,
here's a little ugly fact. A lot of the same techniques that are used in mega churches are the same ones that are used in gangs. They're the same ones that are used in political parties. They're the same
politics,
ones
yep.
used in lynch mobs.
What are those techniques?
And it's when you discourage critical thinking.
Mm.
Like when you are not
Like
able to
school?
question your pastor. Like if you are questioning your pastor, it's just like you're questioning God. First of all, if you have true faith, you should be able to talk to God
Yes.
and come with questions that you don't understand without being afraid that you're going to be killed in the middle of the night. And so, if the
Right.
person that is teaching you your spiritual foundation is telling you that it is not all right to question them, it's not all right to say, hey, this doesn't seem right, then that's when you need to take a step back and say, you know what, something's not right here. And that's the same thing for a teacher that's telling you not to do something in the classroom, don't question me, blah, 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 or your parents, and I know that in situations where you're talking about children and parents, of course, it's authority figures, but that's also that same thing in abusive relationships.
Well, here's the thing. A smart pastor isn't going to himself come out and punish you for questioning him. He's going to get the other members to do the attack for him. So the level of psychological manipulation, and I think a lot of pastors who don't come from pimping, like stumble into the psychological manipulation. Like they don't know the formula when they get into it, but they quickly learn it, and that power that they get from that manipulation starts to feed and drive them. Now, this doesn't happen to all of them, but I think even to some of the smaller ones. And one thing they didn't get into, and I just sort of want to transition into that last piece.
Hold on, before we get into that last piece, I do want to say, while you said that some of them don't start out that way, I will say that a lot of the really bad ones are attracted to things like churches because of that. A lot of sociopaths, same thing with politicians, a lot of sociopaths are attracted to politics and religion because of the manipulative tools. And so you have to be very careful about who you choose to follow. But anyway, this last part, go ahead.
So they talked about the financial manipulation, the somewhat abandoning of the community. And then at the very end, they talked about the role of the pastor in the lives of the women. And I just rewound that part, and I just said,
talk about it. He slipped it in one sentence and kept moving. Because I was like, wait.
I'll paraphrase. He basically said the pastor becomes the women's husband, father, son, the Holy Ghost, and everything in between. And I said, I've been saying this for a month of Sundays, a solid month of Sundays.
Becomes a surrogate man. I kind of wrote the quote down.
Good. I'm glad you did, girl.
Becomes a surrogate man for a church full of, and this is true, a church full of single women, and not necessarily single women as you're not married, but there are a lot of men who are married that refuse to go to church. So a lot of married women who would like for their men to go to church, they're single when they go to church, and that black pastor does become that surrogate man for them. And it's nothing like a black woman's love. So we are going to ride till the wheels fall off. And so that gene or whatever we have in us, it causes women like that to protect that pastor no matter what.
Well, and he said a surrogate man, and he said husband or son.
And that's what I'm saying. Like you see how hard we ride for our men. Like when something happens to our black boys, we're there. When something happens to our black men, we're there. And so it's the same thing with that pastor. It's that automatic protective, nurturing instinct. And
it's that nurturing instinct with and being able to divorce basic logic, like the whole Eddie Long molestation piece. Like, I assure you that many of those people, women in that congregation, saw him with his arm around a boy or something and didn't feel right about it. They just didn't feel like, they didn't see him do anything or say anything. They just didn't feel anything. It just didn't feel right about it. And then when the news came out, they were willing to, because they felt complicit in it, because they didn't do anything about that feeling, they were willing to turn around and be like, ooh, they just trying to persecute this black man with this good toupee. No. He did some shit. And, you can't continue to, you can continue to ignore it, but, it's stupid to do that. It's just stupid. Like, where's your logic?
But it's even like with Jamal Bryant.
I was wanting to bring him up. Oh,
everything about Jamal Bryant, and he can still stand in a pulpit and say something to the effect that these hoes ain't loyal. And
no, not to the effect of, he can say these hoes ain't loyal.
Oh yeah, he did say that verbatim. But I'm saying, like, to know all of his history, and then to, first of all, still, because they wanted to support this handsome, bright, charismatic black man, that they were willing to suspend disbelief for everything else and still go to his church, and then still have him come up and say that in the pulpit and still be cool. Like, yeah. Amazing.
I said the same. I just said amazing too.
Well, it's amazing, and then you go to his website and you have to search high and long just to find the word God.
Jesus.
Like, the first time I went to his website.
You're breaking up.
Uh-oh.
I don't know. That.
You broke up.
Who, me?
Yeah.
I was just saying that the first time I ever went to his website a couple years ago.
The first time I went to his website, there was a picture of a Bentley.
Yeah.
She keeps breaking up.
Yeah, I don't know. The thing is that I said, there is a large portion of the population who is okay with this. They're not here to critically think. They're here to go and quote unquote get the word, even if that word is twisted against them. That's what they're here for. They're here to jump around and shout. They're here to stunt on them hoes at church with their fine hats. That's what they're there for. They're there to go to church and meet the man that Steve Harvey told them God had planned for them. That's what they're here for.
And the thing is, with regard to this film, this is why I really liked this documentary, was that it took you in so many different directions. That is one of those things where I feel like, because I didn't want to watch a film where if you went to one of those churches, you walked out being angry because you felt like it was just a bashing of your pastor or whatever. But I felt like it gave you so much good information, and it was so unbiased that you couldn't walk away and just be like, I just felt like it gave.
But if your mind is not open to receiving that information.
Yeah, and I know there are going to be people who aren't open to receive it, but I just felt like it was one of those things where it's a conversation starter. It's one of those movies where you could say, all right, especially like if you have a friend where you're kind of wondering, okay, why are you in this situation? Why are you, whatever. Maybe it's one of those things where you could watch it and have good dialogue. I don't know if people would listen who are so far down deep in that movement, but I really liked the way that they did it, because it wasn't like they came out like, this gonna be against Creflo, this gonna be against Eddie. But by the time you start connecting, well, actually, you know what, I always use this phrase. Remember what I used to say? I just point out the dots,
right,
and let you connect them.
Connect them for yourself.
All they did was just put the dots.
But again, did these people need a movie to connect the dots? They don't. A lot of them don't want the dots connected, which I think is fine. I think that is perfectly fine. If you don't like, I don't want the dots connected between these processed wheat thins and this cheese that I'm eating, and me being sick 3 days. I don't want those dots connected because I'm enjoying it right now. And who are you to tell me not to enjoy these damn wheat thins? They're delicious.
You doing a Sister Odell church scoot down the grocery aisle.
Over my cheese and wheat thins. What?
Long as I got King Wheat Thins.
Oh my God. Oh wait, we have so many comments. Okay, let me just
Oh,
start reading
okay.
them. First Baptist of Glenarden. I'm not a member, but I've been to services many times. I was in a go-go musical there when I was in high school, non part. I was an extra. I got shot at a go-go, but didn't die. I don't. You know what, Hustle? I don't know.
What?
I don't even know what your life is about, so I'm gonna hold you up in prayer. Hustle also says I can say much, but I deal with finances of most of the black churches in DC. Ain't saying anything else. Yeah, yeah. So there is somebody at my salon who she and her husband, I think, do financial work for a lot of the local churches, and she never says any names, but she never says anything good about what's going on financially with churches. Leonard Brothers says, okay, two things are working against me being great right now. One, I'm still at work, and two, once again, the beauties of WWM Pod are not on camera tonight. I came in here hoping to see y'all, and nope. Why, Jesus? Why? Fights fair. He's
Aw.
so
He
dramatic.
came to reclaim his
Sorry
light
about
skin
that.
tone. That's what he came
Yeah,
to do.
showing off his light skinness. Leonard Brothers also says, you may have covered this before I got here, but where can the rest of us find the film? It sounds interesting. I like to see how it looks visually. I
Mhm.
actually tweeted out the link and the 30% discount for the deluxe version. So I encourage you all to get it and pass it along, especially, I mean, if you want a discussion point for, honestly, even in your churches, it would be a decent discussion point, just to, maybe not necessarily shake things up, but even if you're in a situation where your pastor is very transparent, I think watching it will be a great reminder about the importance of transparency in these situations.
And also to the point where he was saying how, because I know LB is like a filmmaker or whatever,
Mhm.
about how it was done visually. I thought that it was really well put together.
Mhm.
Hmm.
The scenes were very clean. I thought the editing was good. So just, just from that standpoint too, they really, really did a good job with this film.
Mhm.
So do we want to rate it based on sips or based on cheers, or how do we want to rate it?
Yeah.
Do we want to rate it at all? I think it was just good food for
Yeah, I
thought.
think it was just good because I would hate to do like the next movie and then be like, yeah, that thing's only
Yeah,
one
I don't
sip.
want to do that.
Okay.
But I will say, like I said at the very beginning, I really enjoyed this. I really did.
I think I enjoyed it, but I wish they would have spent a little bit more time on what the black community is missing now that the black church is not necessarily the same type of focal point that it used to be.
I wish it would have been longer. I mean, it was short. Like there were things that I wish they would have gotten more into, just like what you said, and also the part about the women. I just felt like it could have been 30 minutes longer, and I wouldn't have been bored.
Yeah, I mean, there was a lot that they could have talked about, but I mean, I guess that's always true with the documentary. And it was almost though like it was just kind of to get you starting to think. And
Yeah.
really, ultimately, I think that that's the most important thing. Like, I don't think that it should be anybody's goal to. Well, I won't say that. Let me back up. I'll just say that I don't think it was their goal to change anyone's mind about anything,
Hmm.
but just to get you to think about things. And so, even if you are a member of a mega church, you don't have to be defensive about it because
Mhm.
we did talk about some of the benefits, and they didn't say that it was all bad. And just because you're a member of a small church, I mean, all the things can apply. It's just think about, do you feel like your needs are being met? Whether that's my needs are being met spiritually, and that's all I need from my church. My needs are being met in terms of whatever financial needs that I have, or whatever the needs are that you feel like you have, and where you would like them to be met in the space of church. If that's working for you, great. And if it's not working for you, it at least gives you the opportunity to reflect upon where you are and if it's working for you and what you need to do differently, if anything. So,
Mhm.
hmm and real quickly, I know we're at the end of our time, but I want to go back to something that I think Sojo mentioned earlier about with in the lane of what church does for the community.
mhm.
And I don't know if we've talked about this before here, but I know we've talked about it in WhatsApp, that the church used to be where kids go to learn to speak in public, because you got your Easter pageant, you got your this, you got your that. where we learn to dress, and I can't help when dress all sorts of things, and I can't help every time that I go to a restaurant and get a black waiter or waitress, a young black teenager waiter or waitress who talk, how can I help you? I cannot help but think you never were in an Easter pageant because Sister Odell would not allow.
No.
You not enunciate.
You better be 3 years old with your shine shoes, and you better say, "Good morning, church of God in Christ."
Right. Right.
Jesus rose on the third day. Like,
Yes, exactly. And it builds confidence that, is valuable later on in life and, in school. So I think, another thing they didn't touch on is the value of the education you receive in church as a child.
Yeah.
So I say all to say, I'm going to wait for part 2 because I expect that they got some other things to cover. And I don't know who I need to write. Maybe it's Todd Williams.
Yeah,
because it was Todd's film. That's right.
Producer, director, and writer was Todd L. Williams. The
Mhm.
executive producers were I think this is Jamarlin Martin, Marvin Frazier, and Barry L. Grant. So we definitely wanted to, let you guys know who were the ones behind this film.
Okay. Well, with that, we did tweet out the link. We do encourage you guys to use it, and to get the 30% discount on the deluxe edition, use the discount code WWMPOD. We'll have that in the show notes as well as on our website. We've also tweeted it. And with that, we'd like to go ahead and close this show. Lady Buddha, who do you give your cheers to?
I'm giving my cheers to Moguldom Studios, our sponsor, for sponsoring this interesting conversation this evening. So cheers to Moguldom Studios. And you can find me on the web. I haven't blogged the last couple weeks, but I do hope to get a couple out. We'll see. But I'm at www.cocostudio.com, COCO Studio Singular, cocostudio.com. And you can find me on Twitter. I have been tweeting a little bit more recently. I'm at ND Collier, COLLIER. What about y'all?
Sojo, what about you?
My Twitter handle. Oh, wait, my cheers first. Definitely want to give cheers to Moguldom Studios, but also I did want to give a special cheers to Helke and Brian Pruitt. Helke is my college roommate, and Brian is her husband, and they are celebrating their, I think this is their 16th wedding anniversary today. But they also celebrated their 23rd year of actually being a couple. They were high school sweethearts on yesterday. So I wanted to give them a special shout out because I love both of them. Team Pruitt. And you guys can find me on Twitter at SojoXOXO. That's SOJOXOXO. And also, thank you to people who have been liking my Facebook page, the Feminine Facebook page, because I guess you guys found it on my bio. So if you guys want to find me on the web, you can click on that link on my Twitter page. That's it.
Okay, and this is Think Pretty Smart. I would like to give my cheers to Lady Buddha in Blue. Next time you hear her voice, she will be married. She'll have jumped the broom and done all that stuff and have a new next of kin, so that's exciting.
Can we do the scene for next week? Have the scene for The Color Purple when Suge Avery come in and say, "I was married now."
I don't know. Listen, I don't know if we're gonna do that. We'll do that when you get married. I don't know that Lady Buddha wants all that, so we're gonna follow her lead on that. So that's my cheers, and you can reach me on Twitter at think_P_smart, and you can reach the show at Whiskey Wine Moon. That is on Twitter, and like I said earlier, we are on Stitcher, Podomatic, iTunes, as well as the internet on our webpage. And G+. Basically, we're everywhere, so share our information with your friends and your foes, as well as your church people. Also, leave us 5 stars.
Hate mail.
Leave us 5-star reviews on all of those, particularly iTunes and Stitchers, and we will read them on the air. Again, thank you very much and have a great rest of your week. Bye.
Yeah.
Cheers.